My name's Scott. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, so before I get into the formalities, I gotta tell you, I expected them to play like The Adolescents or Black Flag or some punk rock music, and they play like, what was that? Was that even country? I don't know what it was. Oh, man. Okay, let's get started. Let's have a great time tonight. I don't know about you, but I already had a really bad time. And now I'm here to have a really good time because since I've been sober, I've been having a great time. And I'm super grateful to be here. I didn't see Randy tonight. Is he not here? Well, thank you, Randy, for not being here, but for inviting me to speak. And you know, incidentally, the criteria for me speaking tonight, I've never seen such a low bar. He was like, you liked punk rock? He's all, we need more punk rockers up there. He goes, can you talk next week? And I was like, sure. So that's how that happened. How many mothers are in the, show your hands. I think we all should give them a big round of applause, right? Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Aside from, you know, gifting your children with life itself, the greatest gift I'm sure you could give your children is your sobriety, right? I mean, I grew up in a household where there wasn't some sobriety, and it was very, very challenging. So my hat goes off to you, and happy Mother's Day, and I hope you have a wonderful day tomorrow. I'd also like to thank Jim and Christopher here, and this is fantastic. They came to support me tonight, but I didn't tell either one of them I was speaking. So thank you, guys. And it was kind of funny because Christopher came with me on the car ride over, and he's like looking at me, and he saw my socks, and he's all, Scott, I just picked up on something. And I'm like, what? He says, are you speaking tonight? You know, and I said, I won't answer that question. But also, I'd like to welcome the newcomers. You know, if you're new into Alcoholics Anonymous, I welcome you, you know. And I guess what I would say is, you know, I'm so happy you're here, but I also hope you realize if you identify as an alcoholic or an addict, you have a terminal fatal illness. Terminal fatal illness. And what I found, for me at least, the treatment for that is right here in the 12 steps. And in our text, in the book, it says, here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. And that's verbatim, okay? I can't do a lot of quoting verbatim. I have ADHD, and I think I have the HD ADHD, which is high definition. And I also have what's called CRS. Can't remember shit, okay? So you put that all together, and it's like, my better half, she even says, Scott, your brain is like oingo boingo. It's like bing bong, you know, whatever. So, and she would have come with me tonight. In fact, I generally attend this meeting. I sit right back there where Jim and John are, and I much prefer sitting there than being up here. Believe me, you know, I say yes when I'm asked to speak, and I appreciate that it's an honor and a privilege to do such a thing. So let me get on here. Incidentally, if you are new and you're not convinced you're an alcoholic, there's a couple ways you can diagnose yourself. And in the book, it talks about, you know, try some controlled drinking. And I think that's a little extreme. Now, there's some things in the book I think are great, and some things I'm like, I don't know. There's also this thing that floats around in here. I have it in my book. It's called the 20 questions. Have you guys seen this? Some of you? And if you're new, take this test. Now, if you don't want to be an alcoholic, don't take this test. Because I assure you, this will snare. You could walk down the street and go, dude, you know, like anybody, it'll snare you because it's stuff that doesn't apply to most of us. It's like, do you lose time away from work due to drinking? It's like, these are rookie questions, right? You know, they got to put something on here really good, like, did you ever wake up in a Mexican prison dressed like a woman, or you know, something. I mean, I don't know what to say about this, but anyhow, there's other ways to figure it out, you know, and thank God for that. So I'll get down to my story, and I'm going to trust you guys to tell me when I'm supposed to stop. What time do I speak till? Like 5 till, 10 till? Oh, they got a wrap it up sign. All right, I'll get on with it. So it just so worked out, I got arrested for the 30th time. 30th? Now 31 if you count Mexico, but I I know they don't keep records, so I just go with 30. You know what I mean? I got arrested for the 30th time August 4th of 2004. And I was in Santa Barbara. My life wasn't very romantic at that time. I was living in a half-stolen car. Half stolen. And people after the meeting are going to ask me, what do you mean by half stolen? And I just want to be clear. A half stolen car is one that you borrowed from somebody who didn't own it, and the owner didn't know that they had it, and then you never return it. Okay. So I was living in that thing. I had it parked on the side of the road on Padre Street up in Santa Barbara. Yeah, it wasn't going too well. The mobile restroom, mobile station restroom was sort of my secondary apartment. That's where I was like, I was using their facility, so to speak, and they also had a store connected there, so I was able to, I'd come to at 2 in the afternoon living in that car. I would walk over to the mobile station. I'd get a 24-ounce beer, a pack of Marlboros if I was fortunate enough to have funding, and I'd go into their restroom and I'd get myself cleaned up, and that's how I was living, and I remember one day I walked over to that restroom, and the lady who was working there, who became familiar with me, I asked her, I said, hey, oh, by the way, can I get the restroom key? And she says, no, I'm not giving you the key. We know it, you're taking over in there. And I thought, my God, what a bitch. Like I'm a good customer. I buy beer and cigarettes here like on the daily, and then I lock myself in their restroom for a half hour, and I tell people to leave and stuff, and so I had a righteous resentment, and I just switched it over. I said, screw it, I'll go over to Shell, so I'm one of the few people that I know in Alcoholics Anonymous who's officially been ejected from a public restroom, or evicted, if you will. So anyhow, I stayed in jail until December the 23rd of 2004. The car got towed away. Everything I had was in it. And I started my life over from scratch. Nothing left. I didn't have a wristwatch, no cash, nothing going on. But there was this guy who came into the jail, and I signed up for this program called the Sheriff's Treatment Program, or STP program. And the STP program was essentially a treatment program within the jail for the inmates. And that was my third course of treatment, so I had been in there a few other times. And when I got out, there was this man who was coming in, and he was bringing in AA meetings, doing H&I work. His name was Blackie. And Blackie told me while I was in there, he said, Scott, when you get out of here, he said, I'll do whatever I can to help you. And I didn't know what that looked like or meant, but I said, okay, I was willing. Now, I had a parole hold, and I was supposed to get released in the morning, December 23rd. But what happened is the parole hold kept me in there until the evening, and it just so worked out, and this is totally God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. He just happened to be getting out of the AA meeting at the exact same time I was being released from jail. And it was so cool because there was this guy that was with me that got released, and he was talking about, hey, let's go hit the liquor store down the road. Because, Santa Barbara County Jail, it's just a walk down the hill and a left-hand turn, and I'm at the liquor store. And then I'm off and running. Well, I didn't go. I said, no, I gave this guy my word, I'm going to stay. And he gave me a ride to a sober living home, and I stayed the night on their couch. They didn't have any beds. And Christmas Eve morning, I woke up at about 7 a.m. on this couch, and I just opened my eyes and I said, today is the beginning of my new life, Now, we'll get to, I'm going to apologize in advance. I went to the rescue mission in Santa Barbara at 7:30 a.m. I knocked on their back door. A buddy of mine answered the door, a guy that I knew who I'd been incarcerated with, and he goes, Scott, what are you doing here? I said, you're not going to believe it, Ron, they let me out. He goes, wow, cool. Well, what are you doing here? I said, I need some clothing. I had nothing left. He goes, dude, I'm the clothing guy here. Once again, and so he gave me a, I'll never forget it. He gave me a brand new pair of Etnies tennis shoes. He gave me a backpack. He gave me some slacks, He gave me a couple nice collared shirts. I was wearing the clothes I was arrested in, so I walked. Now, it was Christmas Eve, and the guys at the recovery home were telling me, hey, Scott, guess what? They're going to do marathon meetings at the Alano Club. And they're going to be going all day long, from early in the morning till late at night. They just 24 hours or whatever, they'll have these meetings. And I said, wow, that's great. So I got the clothes, and I went ahead and went straight to the Alano Club. I walked into their bathroom, and I stripped off the clothes that I had been arrested in, and I threw them in the garbage can, and I put on my new coat of armor, with the white shirt, and I had the pants and the new tennis shoes, and I just felt like a new man, and I walked right into an AA meeting. My very first meeting that wasn't in an institution. And it was, I don't know how to describe this, but the marathon meetings at the Alano Club, at least back then, were a little bit dysfunctional, let's face it. There was like 8 people, maybe 10 people. 3 of them were sound asleep. It was early in the morning. It was Christmas Eve, and let's face it, the Alano Club attracts a lot of different people. But I felt right at home, and I made a friend there. His name was Jason, and we're still friends today. He's still sober as well. And what happened is I sat through that meeting. They called on me to share. And I shared for about 45 minutes, the same as... And then after the meeting, we went out to the parking lot, and we were out there smoking, and we were like drinking coffee, and it was the holidays. There was like cookies. I'm like, this place is great. Having just gotten out of jail, I was over the moon. Well, this woman came over, and I knew she had something to do with the meeting. And I wasn't sure what, because I didn't really understand the hierarchy of Alcoholics Anonymous yet. All I knew is I'd been in institutional meetings, and I heard about people taking commitments and doing things for the meeting, and I heard about, having a sponsor and working through these steps. And this is stuff that I had been exposed to just by people talking about it, but never really experienced it. And this gal comes up, and she looks at me, and I'm talking to my new friend Jason, and she says, Scott, I heard you share in there. And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, that was really a great talk, And I thought, wow, I'm somebody, And she says, I need a favor. And I said, and the light bulb went off in my head. I said, wow, I'm at my very first meeting, and I'm going to end up with a commitment. And so I said, well, what do you need? I'll do anything. And she says, I need to get laid. Hey. Don't shoot the messenger. So now, having just been released from custody, I was frightened to death. 100% clean and sober. I looked at her with every ounce of energy I could and mustered up an answer for her. I said, listen, I just got out of jail last night. I live in a recovery home with 28 other guys, and I'm certain one of them can help you. And so I got out of there, and my sponsor, this is all Scott, I'm Forrest Gump here, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's what happened. So my sponsor said, you know what, Scott, I want you to call me every day, and I want you to tell me what you learned in your recovery. And I said, hey, I'll do it. And so I couldn't wait to get back to the recovery home to tell him, hey, my lesson is you got to be careful at the Alano Club, And he said, oh, Scott, don't worry about that. It's okay. I'm going to take you to a men's meeting. And I was like, well, wait a second here. If I'm a do whatever you want kind of guy, but when it comes down to if this happens at a men's meeting, I'm dropping out of AA and quick. I'll find another way to recover, So to back this up a little, I think I was maybe 5-6 years sober. I got called to go speak out at this meeting in Bakersfield, and it was a group like here tonight. A lot of people, a very, very nice church, and all the people were great out there. They're just fantastic. And I shared that story, and like you, everybody kind of got a chuckle out of it. I probably pissed a couple people off, but hey, my feelings are soft too, and. So at the end of the meeting, everybody lines up to thank the speaker, and that's me, and I'm standing here, and I'm watching this one guy, and this guy keeps letting everybody cut in front of him, and I'm thinking, what's this guy doing? Is he gonna like, it just got kind of weird because the place was really empty and out there was a guy standing over by the lights, and he's like, come on, let's go. And the guy's standing there and he quietly walks up to me and he says, Scott, I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous for 25 years waiting for that to happen. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, this is creepy. I got to get out of here, And so I told him, I said, man, keep coming back. That's what I told him. I don't know what else to say with that guy, but I've had a lot of fun in this program, and one of the things that certainly attracted me to Alcoholics Anonymous is the laughter in the rooms, you know what I mean? Because I believe laughter is extremely healing, and parts of what's happened for me, to me, and at me have been very funny, So moving forward here, my sponsor took me to this men's meeting, and he said, Scott, here's how it's going to go. You're going to go up, you're going to get a commitment at the St. Mary's men's meeting. And I said, sure, I'll do whatever it takes, And he rushes me up to the meeting. We get there, it's just about to start. I run over to the secretary. At the time, the secretary's name was Tracy. And Tracy, I told him, I said, hey, I'm Blackie's guy, I'm here to get the commitment. And this was my second meeting. And he goes, oh, yeah, Scott, we got you covered. You'll be our chairman. Have a seat. We're just about ready to get started, right? And I'm like, perfect, And so I'm sitting there in the meeting, and it was a fantastic meeting. And I don't know if you guys, any of you have ever been to the St. Mary's retreat, when it used to be open for Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I think they had retreats there also, obviously. But Roland Hazard actually had a hand in on building it and staying there at one point, which is pretty remarkable. So I'm waiting during this meeting for Tracy to make this announcement, like, hey, you guys, Scott's going to be our new guy, our chairman, and I didn't know what the chairman in Alcoholics Anonymous does. I thought I was going to be like reading down to you or having a special uniform. I didn't know. Second meeting. And so after the meeting, he didn't say a damn thing. Nothing. So I walk over to him after me. I'm like, hey, Tracy, that was a great meeting. He's like, yeah, Scott, welcome, man. We're so glad you're here. And now you got the commitment. And he's all, why don't you go see Mark and he'll show you how to, do the commitment. I'm like, well, how come you didn't make an announcement? He goes, about what? I said, I'm the chairman. Don't these people have to know? He goes, no, you just come before the meeting, set up the chairs, and after the meeting, put them in the closet, And I thought, oh, my God, my ego was just being deflated by the moment. And I'm like, So after a whole year of doing that commitment, they made me the coffee guy, which was a total upgrade, right? Because then I was like now the trainer for the chairman, right? I was like, dude, you're way down here. And then I got to be the secretary of that meeting as well, which was a total honor and a privilege. And that's one of the things, like for me, when I got sober and I started attending Alcoholics Anonymous, I just got super busy in this program. I took H&I commitments, sponsoring guys probably early, like before I even finished the steps. I wanted to give this thing away, and it's been a total gift. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of working with others. I had the good privilege of going with John last week. We went to a parolee house and we're hanging with these dudes that had just got out for doing 26, 28 years. And it's incredible, because I too have spent a lot of time incarcerated, never, really long, like I did 3 years once, which for a lot of people is a lot, but for those guys, that's standing on their head stuff, But we get to give back in this program, and there's hope for anybody. It says it in the book. It says the only requirement for membership is just a desire to stop drinking, And I'm so grateful for that, because this is an inclusive program, not exclusive, inclusive. That means it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you have a relationship with God or your Creator, or you don't even believe there is one. It's open to everybody, and that's what makes this such a unique functioning movement, And I'm so grateful that I'm living at a time to appreciate and enjoy the fact that, I was talking to Connie, who I met, and thank you, Connie, for welcoming me tonight and having a little talk. And we were talking about, I love the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've collected some of the original first edition big books, which now they're out of my price range, but I have a couple of them, a few of them actually. And one of the coolest things that's happened through buying those is I found some of the older literature in those books. And, it says on one of the pamphlets, it says, try to make it to one meeting per week. Think about that, one meeting. But the reason is, this is probably, I'm just guessing, maybe from the 40s. In the 40s, if you had the luxury of possibly going to one meeting, that was pretty cool, right? Because the meetings were quite spread apart. So, and certainly more so in certain regions than others. And maybe there's people here who know more about that than I do, because I started this in basically 2004. I'll talk a little about what my life used to be like and sort of what happened and then what it's like now. I grew up I was in Burbank until I was 9. My family, we moved to Ojai. At 9 years old, going to Ojai, I was a little broken up about it. All my friends were in Burbank, and then literally within 10 minutes of being in Ojai, I fell in love with it. I mean, you could skateboard like down the middle of the street there. We had Lake Casitas, and I was already addicted to golf at that age, and so they had these 2 great golf courses there. I was super into baseball and fishing. I had really kind of the American Pie lifestyle. My father was in the insurance business. My mother was sort of the glue that held our family together, and my father was an alcoholic. But he was a very functional alcoholic, unlike myself. So he was able to, make the bread, and my mom was, there for us all the time. They divorced when I was 12, so 3 years after getting to Ojai. And at 12 years old, my biggest concern was, should I pursue golf or baseball? Because I was really good at both. Golf probably better, but I had huge dreams inside of me, huge. And I was competing on a world level at that age, and I just saw my future. I was looking into my future, and I had so much hope. And after their divorce, my dad, he upped the drinking game, and my mom turned into Jenny from Forrest Gump. She just ran off, and it was never the same. It was never the same. And coincidentally, right at that age, I started kind of getting into surfing, and I found out it's a lot cooler to be a guy that, can smoke a little weed and drink a little beer and surf than a golfing geek, and the girls like that better. And so that's what I did. I started running away from home, and by 15, I had left, and I never came back. I haven't been back since. Of course, maybe I'll have time to get to more of my story about that, but so at 15, I was in a punk rock band. I was working right here on the corner of Seward and Main at Foster's Donuts. Some of you guys used to go in there when you smoked weed, yeah? And I had it made in that place because I had like the afternoon shift, which is perfect for an alcoholic, and even a young alcoholic. I mean, it was fantastic. I remember one time taking LSD, and I was in there, and then I was like super high, and I was baking, and I was by myself, and I'm like, people are coming in. And then the cops came in, and I'm like, why didn't I think of this, And it's like when you're, yeah, so anyhow. Yeah, that didn't, it's just weird, At 18, my mother committed suicide. And so that was just like the dagger that put the dagger on top of it. I just was like, oh my gosh, And so for a few years, I just kind of floundered around drinking, trying to get a little job here or there. I didn't really do anything or have any direction. There was a lot of drinking going on. And my buddy and I came up with this great idea. We should do a geographic, and we went to the island of Oahu. We bought one-way tickets, and we stayed on Oahu. And over there, I was working as a valet parker. I was drinking every night to extremes. I mean, I remember they used to have like a breathalyzer thing on the wall in the bar, and our game was, let's see who can get it the highest. You know what I mean? And my drink back then was Long Island iced teas. And I don't even know what they put in them, but it's like one of every kind of liquor, and it's all the way to the top. And we would suck down like 5 of those things and blow into that machine. And then, I mean, I would be so intoxicated leaving the nightclub. The next stop would be like the little 7-Eleven, and that's how we were eating. You know, we didn't have money for like regular food. We just eat at 7-Eleven. They'd have the little chicken sandwiches for like 89 cents. And we'd pile like as much pickles and all the extra stuff that was free on there. Sometimes we'd slide 2 patties into the thing and be like, oh, I'm getting over on them, you know. Well, I ended up getting arrested for shoplifting in Hawaii, you know, and I tell you what, like when you're just a white surfer kid from Ojai and you're in the Hawaiian jail and they chain you to this dude that's like 10 feet tall and he's like 480 pounds, it's like, this isn't going very well, you know. And so when I got to court, they said, are you guilty or not guilty? And I was talking to the attorney and I said, well, can I get out today? He says, well, if you say guilty, they're probably going to keep you for 30 days. I said, I'm not guilty, you know. So I left and I ended up having probably a warrant there because I never went back to face the music. Well, when I got sober, I decided to face my music. And so I called the court clerk in Hawaii and I told her my story, not the whole story, just that I wanted to clear up my matter. And she said, we have no record of you. She said, Scott, to be honest, over here it's a transient population. We get people that bail from here all the time. You're welcome to travel here. There's no warrant for your arrest, you know. And I thought, that's fantastic. So I got off the hook with that one. After that, though, I decided to take off and come back to the mainland here. I moved to Orange County. I had a great job with the Los Angeles Times newspaper, another great job for an alcoholic because my hours were from 2 to 9. I was a sales manager. I ran a crew of guys. I was a driver. I showed up drunk to work a few times, and they warned me. Now, think about that. Times have sure changed, right? Yeah, so during my job there, and I met the woman of my dreams, like my soulmate, or who I thought was my soulmate, and I proceeded to destroy the relationship one drink at a time with lies, drugs. You know, she lived in Woodland Hills, and I was living down there in Orange County, and when she was gone, I'd be doing cocaine and drinking and going to bars and doing all the stuff that didn't fit into her lifestyle, you know. And so ultimately, we spent a couple of years together, and she left me, and I thought, you know, if I go to AA, I'll probably get her back, you know. And I remember walking up to the Costa Mesa Alano Club, and there was a guy at the door, and I walked up, and I looked in, and I had my tie on, you know, for my work, and I looked in, and I just walked away. I couldn't bring myself to go into the meeting, and the guy at the door was like, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? You know, what's your name? And I just got back in my vehicle and left. And I wish I could go back in time and go into that meeting, but I just wasn't ready, you know. It takes what it takes. So I don't know, my 20s kind of just bled into my 30s, you know. I have fuzzy memories of, I have really fuzzy memories of my 30s because a lot of the time I actually was incarcerated. I think what happened is the cops got faster and I got slower. And yeah, I moved back to Ojai and got heavily involved in another relationship with methamphetamine. It got so bad, okay, I ended up living in a motorhome with a cat and a goldfish, and that motorhome was so shot out. I mean, it was shot out. I think it cost $400 and I like only paid $200, and the guy, you know, it was just one of those things. But it ran not very well. Like it broke down like every few blocks kind of thing. And so, but I had to constantly move the motorhome. And you know, cats, they don't like moving. They hate it. They like to be stationary. And so that really sucked. And then I think one day I was driving down the street and the thing, like, it was such a piece of shit. And I'm driving this motorhome and I put on the brakes, but I forgot to put the goldfish in the damn little thing. And I hear this slide and I'm like, oh my God, the goldfish, you know, and so I pull over and like, where's the goldfish? And I got, you know, tweakers, they have shit everywhere, right? And I'm like beer bottles and clothing and pipes, and oh my God, and you know, I gotta find this goldfish, you know, and I found the goldfish, man, and I got him, and I put some water in the cup, and oh, he's alive, like. And that was like the greatest accomplishment of all of my 30s, the whole decade. You know what I mean? And it's like I feel like I even still kind of want a standing ovation for that, you know. And so I got 10 minutes? A little more? Okay. All right. So I also had this tweaker girlfriend, and she would come around once in a while and like move into the motorhome for like 2 days, and then we'd get in a fight and she'd bail. And I never knew if she was like for me or against me. I'm pretty convinced now looking back she was totally against me, because it was weird. Like every time she'd come around, my drugs would be gone and I'd be getting arrested, and I could never connect the dots. You know what I mean? It's like what the heck? Like this is just random. It's coincidence, And that's how life was going. And I got chased out of here. I got chased out of here by the cops. I always had warrants. And what's weird is I only have one DUI. That was May of 1986. I got a DUI. And I got pulled over and busted so many times, so hammered. But I had so many other charges. The cops are like, they don't care about the DUI when it's like, we just got the jackpot with this guy. He's wanted for this and that and this. I always had warrants, man, and big ones, And so that was weird. And finally I got chased out of here by the cops. I hit on a roof over here on Thompson Boulevard. I stayed up there for 3 hours, and I was baking in the sun, and I outran them all. And then I snuck across the field of the school to Ross's house. Ross Emery, a lot of you know him. I wish he was here tonight. But he was my escape guy. He helped me. I hid in his truck, and he had to go pick up his girls from school. He's like, dude, this is the wrong time. I'm like, you don't understand. My life is on the line. So he got me to the train. I took the train to Santa Barbara, and then the miracle happened in Santa Barbara, right? I got sober. I got arrested again on that Modoc Road in August, like I talked about. So I think right about then is when God sort of started grabbing my attention, because I met this guy when I was in the jail program. His name was Chuck, and Chuck was my counselor. John knew Chuck, and Chuck was this great big guy, 400-pound guy, beard, total hippie, greatest dude. Like a spiritual giant. And Chuck pulled me into the cell before I was going to state prison. He said, Scott, I want to talk to you. And I thought he was going to teach me how to be in prison, what to look for, what to do, what not to do, and so on and so forth. And he pulls me into the cell and he says, Scott, do you believe in God? I said, yeah, I believe in God. He says, well, if you're ever doubting the existence of God, I want you to look to the dragonfly. And I look at him, I'm like, what are we talking about here? He says, oh yeah, the dragonfly has 2 sets of wings. And one set of wings propels it forwards, while the other set can allow it to fly backwards. He goes, and the wings are transparent, and they remind us that we are the light. And he starts talking all this stuff, and he's like, and in other cultures, the dragonflies represent victory and war, and they remind us of transformation and change. And he was just going crazy about the dragonflies, and I thought he was going to tell me, like, don't hang out with those homies, don't do, whatever. And he just went on and never changed the tune. He talked about dragonflies for like 15 minutes straight. And he says, so if you're ever doubting the existence of God, Scott, you look to the dragonfly. Go get so-and-so. And I walked out of that cell so pissed off. I thought, what a lousy counselor. They should pull his license, right? So a couple days later, the bus for Wasco comes and picks me up. Beautiful Wasco, California. I'm going to the state penitentiary. And that said 10 minutes, John. Okay, good. Making sure I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm headed to Wasco. And I get there, and they keep you up all night. They put you in a paper suit right outside the van. They got you chained to all these other dudes that don't want to be there. And the first thing they do is strip you naked. You bend over and you cough. They look up your butt with a flashlight. It's very romantic. And it's freezing cold, by the way. At least when I arrived, it was the dead of whatever. It was cold, and so everybody's like, oh, this is great, and it's like jumping out of a cold pool or whatever. But yeah, so I get there, and then they put you in the booking, and there's all kinds of commotion and craziness, and you see dudes running with guns, like these block guns, and like the alarms are going off, and my head is just swimming. I'm like, I am never going to survive. I'm a white surfer guy from Ohio. I got one tattoo. It's a drunken mistake. I do not belong here, And I didn't know what was going to happen. They put me in this gymnasium finally at the end of the day with like 300 dudes, and I'm looking in there, and the MAC rep comes up to me, and he starts telling me all the rules, which I was hoping Chuck was going to tell me, but he was telling me, and now it was going in one ear and out the other because I couldn't even think straight. I was terrified. I wanted to pee and scream and cry. That's how I felt. And that's not available, It's not good. You're not doing that. You got to man up in there, right? So I just quietly walked back to my bunk. I sat up on my bunk and I go, screw it. I'm just not going to talk to anybody because they're all the wrong people to talk to here. I don't know who's what, right? So there was this guy next to me, and he was certainly one of the guys I wasn't supposed to talk to. I mean, he had a FU tattoo on your forehead before it was popular. I'm going way back. Like now it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's cool, right? Yeah. And he had all kinds of other tattoos, and he was wearing these boxer shorts, and he was super sweaty, and he had on like some kind of work boots or something. And I thought, that's a funny outfit. And he was really sweaty, so he must have been working out, but he was doing something weird with his bunk, and I'm sitting up on my top bunk, first day, scared to death, and I kind of quietly whispered to him, hey, bro, what are you doing down there? And he turns around, and he goes, check it out. And he handed me a dragonfly on a string. Yeah. So I just remembered what Chuck told me. He said, if you're ever doubting the existence of God, look to the dragonfly. That was his last words. So when I got out from my custody time, I found Chuck. And I said, Chuck, you're not going to believe this story. I got to tell you. I said, remember when you told me all about the dragonfly? He says, what are you talking about? So because I've shared that story multiple times in Alcoholics Anonymous, I became the Dragonfly Man. I've got people in this program have given me cards and candles, and they send me emails and emojis, and it's like, I've got, even at my recovery home, at 1 year sober, I started a recovery home. I have a couple of them now. And that's been something else. What a way to give back, and I've done it now for 18 years. We currently have 2 recovery homes. And I remember when we first started, there was 2 guys there, and one named Daniel and the other was named Rhett. And Daniel and Rhett were young guys. One was 19, I think the other was 20, and they were the funniest damn kids, but they had zero interest in going to meetings. They loved food. So I was speaking at a meeting up in Bakersfield, and it was probably the second time I ever got to speak. And I remember thinking, I got to get Daniel and Rhett to come with me. So I took my tie off, and I went and put it in I put it in the trunk of my car, and I walk in and I go, hey, you guys, what are you doing? They're like, oh, we're playing video games. I was like, cool, man. You guys want some Taco Bell? I'm buying. They're like, yeah, and so they jump in the car, and I get on the freeway, and they're like, dude, Taco Bell's up Milpas. Where are you going? I go, no, we're going to the other Taco Bell, right? And then we blew by the Goleta Taco Bell, too, because I was 101 North, baby, right? Headed straight for Santa Maria, their old Alano Club up there. And we got up there, and I couldn't find Taco Bell in Santa Maria, which is weird. There's probably like 100 of them. But I did find Der Wiener Schnitzel, so they got something to eat. But then I took them to the group, and, both of those guys are dead. They're both dead now. But they were alive when they were with me, and they got exposure to this program. But you know what the problem is? They didn't stay. You see what I'm talking about? We talked about it before the meeting. It's not about keep coming back. It's about stay here. Please, please stay here. Those guys would be, add almost 20 years. They'd be almost 40 years old today, and they were just children. And the mom calls me after they died. They left the place and they died, both overdosed. The mom calls me, Scott, I wish he would have stayed with you. He was so happy, and they were doing so great. And I told her, I wish he would have stayed with me too, because I love those kids. They were funny as hell, and I wish they would have put a little more into, what we do around this program. I ended up getting hired by the sheriff's department. I know, it's hilarious, isn't it? Talk about a background investigation. So they hired me as a counselor. I worked there for 5 years, and I decided I wanted to finally get out of jail. And so I did. And, you know, a little bit about like what my life is like today. Today I really have quality problems. You know, my problems are nothing like the problems I used to have. I've got this wonderful little dog, you know, and my better half, she said, Scott, don't get a puppy. So I got a puppy. And, you know, I get to play golf. I'm full of gratitude today because, you know, I don't know if any of you had the pleasure or the good fortune of seeing Clancy speak while he was alive. And like him or dislike him, one of the things Clancy said that I could relate to is he said, you know, we do not become wonderful around here, but what we get is a chance at a decent life. And that's really all I wanted, was a decent life. And I've exceeded my own expectations, you know. I get to go fishing. You guys will love this. For a living, I used to dabble in drugs, if you hadn't figured that out by my story. I'm now a drug test dealer. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just that people don't call me at 3 in the morning anymore, you know. It's all daytime business. It's legitimate. I have a business license. I have accounts all over the nation. It's fantastic. I do the recovery homes, and I have a couple other things I like to do. Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going to happen if I keep staying sober, but I know exactly what will happen if I get drunk. John says I have 5 minutes left. None, huh? Okay, so because I have 5 minutes left, I want to share a little about my relationship, not with my Creator, with my other higher power. Her name is Stephanie. She generally comes with me here, but she knows I always scare her because I tell her I'm going to talk about her, and she says that I'm not coming, but she's come with me. She lives with me. She knows all my crap. But so I got this probation officer, and she was dynamite. She was so nice, and she was always so well kept and well put together and beautiful. But I always figured she was married. You know, I figured some other guy was lucky. And like, I remember I had to walk into her office, and this was after I discharged my probation and my parole and everything. I was a free man. But because I had the recovery homes, I also had to write letters and have communication with probation. And sometimes they'll come over to the homes and do, you know, home visits and that kind of thing. And so I remember walking into her office one day, and I had a letter for one of the guys that wanted to go. I was taking him for his 1-year sobriety birthday. I promised him a trip to fishing in Mexico if he got 1 year, and he got a year. So we were off to Mexico, but I had to clear it with her first. So I hand-walked the letter in there, and she had her back turned to me, and I looked at her shoulders, and I thought to myself, whoever is married to that woman is the luckiest guy on earth. And I just remember how beautiful, you know, and I thought, wow. And so one day, I didn't talk about this, but since I have a few minutes left, you know, at one point during my recovery, I got sick, and I started feeling really tired, and I had to do the interferon treatment, which is, back then it was interferon ribavirin, and it was for the hepatitis C. And that put me out for about 6 months, and the people of Alcoholics Anonymous came and saved my life, and they'd take me to meetings, and they brought me soup, and I just had to sit still. I lost all the hair on my legs. I had low energy. I lost a bunch of weight, but it did what it was supposed to. But after I got better from that, after the treatment, I decided I wanted to do something, you know, that was kind of just to keep my hands busy, a little part-time job, and I got this part-time job as a vegetable delivery guy for Plow to Porch Organics. And I was out, I know, it's hilarious. I was out one day doing a delivery, and I ran into the probation officer, and she was going to get a coffee, and she says, Scott, oh my gosh, it's great to see you. Would you like to get a coffee? I said, listen, I don't drink coffee past like 8, 9 in the morning, but I'll have a tea. And we sat down and we started talking, and I got to learn a little more about who she is and what she likes to do. And so she said, I was supposed to be in court like 15 minutes ago. I got to go. And she took off running. And so I yelled to her. I said, I'll call you. We'll go surfing. And she's like, okay, you know, and she ran off. And so I called her, and we went surfing. And then we went hiking, and she met my dog. And for 6 months, we became best friends, besties, BFFs. It's wonderful, wonderful. And then somehow we weren't friends anymore. I asked her to marry me. She said, yeah. We've been engaged for 14 years. And let me share with you the benefits of being in a relationship with your probation officer. You still get the handcuffs, but you don't got to go to jail. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, let's thank our speaker again.